सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.
You're listening to Bare Knuckle Bhakti Shorties on the Bhakti Recovery Podcast with Jiva G, coming at you every Monday with a little spiritual some. Hello, it's Monday again. Happy Monday. I hope you had a nice weekend. I hope things were smooth for you guys this past week. I wanted to talk about material sense enjoyment. I don't want to talk about that endless vacuum of filling it. And it never gets filled. It's like this black hole. My experience with running around life, just filling that God-sized hole with material sense enjoyment and never feeling full. Getting that temporary satisfaction. It's not fulfilling. And it's about scratching the itch. And when we scratch the itch, it's temporarily not itchy anymore. But it's an itch that can only be scratched by fulfillment of a higher purpose. That's been my experience. And if I look at the 55 years that I've been on this earth and what I've done to fulfill that empty, happy hole, that God-sized hole of things that I thought that would at least appease me, to the very least appease me. Drugs, alcohol, sex, relationships, rage, anger, harmony, feelings of happiness, endorphins, even being attached and addicted to my own emotions. This is so tricky. Drugs and any kind of outside anything is going to be the thing that's going to be the symptom and the proposed solution to the itch. And it always winds up the same. And depending on what substance that we're using, whether it's an outside substance or just some sort of inside substance, the harsher the substance, the harsher the consequences. That's kind of like easy math. But when it starts to become an inward experience of getting caught in a pattern or caught in an attachment circle of fear, insecurity, the feeling of falling in love, the feeling of watching something that makes you feel better than somebody, or the constant insecurities that may raise your heartbeat, or anything that's going to keep you small, or anything that's going to enlarge in you. All of these things, these ego-driven things. Prayer and meditation is probably the beginning of an action that can help this incessant need for the scratching of that itch. It's quite interesting how if we're aware of the things that we're doing in life, if we're aware of what we're putting in our heads, what we're putting in our mouths, what we're putting in our tissues, the actions that we're doing, the thoughts we're thinking, the people we're hanging around with, the impressions that we're taking in. It's really important to know that these things do affect us, even if it's on a subtle level. Some of them are just quite obvious, but some things are really on a subtle level. If I ask myself today, where am I at? Where am I at? And I really zoom out and put the God lens in the best that I can to my understanding. I'm this teeny little speck with just so much room for improvement, learning how to scratch that itch with spiritual solutions, spiritual things, spiritual enjoyments. And the funny thing is I think my brain and my mind, my conditioning and who I am, it's hard not to think in a duplicitous way. That polar way of thinking that either we're in the material world or we're in the spiritual world. And either I'm practicing spirituality or I'm living in the material world. And having that polarity is part of the problem, actually. And although we are not God, and there are polarities, we are still part and partial. So it's that balance. It's that balance of inviting spiritual solutions into our daily lives, to actually use our spiritual teachings in our daily lives, in our material lives, and trying to find that sweet spot. I think I often, my whole life have knowledgeably, I know intellectually that in a way there are no polarities, but there all are polarities. That's the oxymoron here. But when we know that we're part and partial of God, when we know that we're part and partial of everything and anything that exists, and we are able to sort of have that inherent knowledge, that inherent intelligence that I think we all have, and are able to sort of try as hard as we can to look. It's like that foggy thing on the horizon that we don't really see. We kind of know that there's something on that horizon, and we know what we want it to be, and we know what we want to see, and we keep walking closer to it, but it's still so foggy, and we're just trying to see it. That's kind of how it is when for me, when I'm really trying to figure out that sweet spot, trying to figure out how I can get that spiritualized, when I'm meditating, when I'm praying, and when I'm doing service, or when I'm in sangha and spiritual sangha, and just doing things that are uplifting. Materially, factually, tangibly, and then feeling it also, spiritually and emotionally. Having that in a constant on a daily life is work. It's so much work, but it starts with, being aware, the awareness of that. So learning how to apply those things, it's been for the last 30 years, it's been sort of my mission in life, is to try to figure that out. And even before even knowing that was my mission in life, I was trying to do that. And I just didn't know how. I just thought I could scratch that itch, that itch of emptiness, and I remember when I was a 5-year-old child, and I grew up in New York City, and we grew up on Riverside Drive, on the Upper West Side, and our building faced one one of the parts of the building faced towards the river and the other faced towards West End Avenue. And I was sitting by the kitchen sink and I was looking out the window and I saw the sun setting. The sun was going down, and in New York, those beautiful, fire red, purple sunsets that we have. And it was reflecting off the building that was on West End Avenue and then shining into and I saw the sun and it was shining into the kitchen. And I think this is a normal thing. I think a lot of children have that when you're finding the eye, when the children when kids have these, developmental these developmental landmarks. I don't know what you call them, but one of them is the finding of the I, finding that you're you and you're separate from other things. And I think this was a time when that happened for me. I sat there and I had this incredibly terrifying thought. I was terrified. The light was like just dreamy. It kind of disassociated me from, it's just, I will have this thing with light anyway. I don't know if anyone knows what I'm talking about. If there's a certain dimness of light, I start to feel dreamy and trippy, like I'm on acid or something. And that's happened since I was a kid. And I thought to myself, what if this all isn't real? What if I'm not even here? What if this is all a dream? And that thought literally terrified me. I thought that if nothing was real, that the whole ground and earth could swallow me whole. And I think I carried that fear with me for a long time. Even my parents couldn't know because I probably didn't tell them. And if I did, they probably wouldn't understand that. My parents weren't deep like that. But these kind of realizations, I think it made such an impression on me, and I think I carried that fear with me and tried to cover up that fear. And I think that's when I realized that I'm not part of the spiritual realm. I'm not part of anything. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And I think I realized it without having that intellectual knowledge at that point in my life. And automatically I felt like I don't belong here. There's something wrong. Something went wrong. I'm not supposed to be here. It's very strange. And I think a lot of my life I just tried to eradicate that feeling and tried to the best of my ability to just cover that up through everything, and it's not the only thing. Of course, this is like endless physics of the psyche, the biopsychosocial, spiritual, karmic. There's so many layers to what one specific jiva being is. That is the individual. So later in life, when I got clean and sober, and I revisited this scary incident, I realized how powerful God is. And I realized that if I didn't reach out to that power, that feeling of endless emptiness and what if this is all not real, that feeling will be with me forever. And either I turn to what I know in my deepest fibers of my being and belief and faith, that if I turn to God, and I keep turning to God, and I keep doing those things on a daily basis, that feeling that I had then, it gives me comfort. Now I can go back to that feeling. If I'm not close to God, I can go back to that feeling. And, when you get older, you get more toys to fill yourself with. And especially these days, You get Amazon delivered right to your door. You can shop your shit away and shop your fears away and cry your fears away and talk your fears away and get angry your fears away. You can do anything you want these days. Watch them away. Ignore them. Sweep them under the carpet. You could even pray I don't mean pray your fears away in the proper way. I just mean you can really just pretend that you're doing godlike things through empty rituals and not feel it and feel just as lonely and empty. But really turning your heart over to God. And if those rituals are helping you do that, hey man, that's the best thing to do. Whatever it is that makes you turn to God in that way is what we should be using. Anyway, this is going to be a shorty because I think I'm done. And I'm really grateful to be able to share this with you guys. You know, we can learn how to scratch that itch with spiritual things and learn how to incorporate that in our daily lives. It's possible. And if someone like myself can do it, then anyone can. That's for sure. That's for sure. I just said that California like, no, I don't mean that. That's for sure. No, Bruno. All right, guys. Have a great Monday and see you on Thursday. Haribo. Thanks for listening. I hope you liked the Monday Shorties. Don't forget to check out our full-length episodes on Thursdays. If you like what you heard, spread the word. Peace out.
सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.